All right, everybody. The Celtics keep it rolling. They are now 4-0 to start the season, a 119-108 victory over the Bucks. We're going to recap that for you here, as well as unveil our newest segments going forward for the rest of the season here. Hottest take of the week and our stat of the week. All that and more coming up next here on Green with Envy. You know the deal. Let's lock in. What up, what up, what up? Welcome into another edition of Green with Envy, a post-game recording here. As always, this is your boy Will Weir checking in. How you doing? How you living? Joining me today, as it does each and every time, my best friend, co-host, and the coach of our podcast, the one and only Greg Manakis. Greg, quick question for you here. From this Celtics-Bucks game tonight, did we learn that potentially Jordan Walsh is to Joe Mazzulla as Semi Ojeleye was to Brad Stevens?
As like the Giannis stopper? Like I don't.
Yeah, just he only plays the Bucks game. This is the first time we've ever seen rotation minutes out of Jordan Walsh, Semi Ojeleye, Brad Stevens' favorite. Bucks are in town. I don't know if at that point you were able to put any bets down on FanDuel, but you knew Semi Ojeleye was getting some minutes in those games.
Hey man, let's just throw this out there right now. Like, forget the format of the pod and talking about the morning box score or anything like that. Can we talk about Jordan Walsh getting minutes? That's amazing. Jordan Walsh had real minutes in an NBA basketball game, and he looked good out there, man. I like that he shot a couple 3-pointers. He missed them both, but he shot them with confidence. He was all over the place. I feel like he was getting the loose balls all over the court, just flying around like prime Aaron Nesmith
in there, just getting physical. You know, had that put back on the weak side, looking like your boy in a men's league game right there. A little tip in. Yeah, it was.
I think you got a little more body hair than he does.
A little bit. I'm flexing tonight.
You're showing it off right now. For those of you that are listening on the pod, we are live on Twitter right now. This will obviously be on YouTube. And Will is rocking one of his patented hoodie cutoffs and showing off the shoulder hair.
Let's go. We flexing. We all flexing tonight. Celtics flexing, JB flexing, Jordan Walsh flexing, Mazzulla flexing by getting Jordan Walsh some early run. But to your point, Greg, I was pretty excited when I saw Jordan Walsh getting up off that bench to be the second sub in off the bench tonight. It was, Joe Mazzulla is experimenting right now. He's keeping you on your toes with a lot of his, especially early rotations that he has going on right now. And like, to your point, it was very exciting to see Jordan Walsh get in this game. We're going to get into all that here. Celtics win 119-108. Little housekeeping here. Appreciate anybody that may have tuned in to us on the Bleacher Report app over the weekend. On Saturday, we're actually, to be honest, TBD if it even actually went through. We had a little bit of technical issues. We think, maybe, we're not sure. But
there was one clip that made it out of there. So like it clearly got recorded.
There was two. There was two different clips. It definitely got recorded. I just, okay. I don't know what happened in live time. So we're going to be working with our homies over at Bleacher Report, hopefully get that cleaned up, because this Saturday, November 2nd, we're right back at it. Celtics, Hornets, for you sickos that are sitting in on a Saturday night, or maybe you're out on a Saturday night and you got your phone in you and you got to just pop in an AirPod and, listen to what the Green with Envy guys got to say about the Celtics and Hornets, see what LaMelo Ball, old friend Grant Williams, and Charles Lee are up to. We're going to have that for you guys. So if you want to check that out, download the Bleacher Report app. Then go ahead and follow the Celtics, as well as you can find myself and Greg on there if you want to follow us for live notifications. And yeah, come tap in with us Saturday night.
One interesting new little subplot that's happening in that game on Saturday night. 6th Man of the Year award, Trey Mann versus Payton Pritchard. Little early battle for 6th Man of the Year.
That's right. That's going down. The 6th Man of the Year campaign for Payton Pritchard took off tonight. And that's kind of where we need to start with this game, Greg, here. Once again, 119-108 Celtics take down the Bucks. We'll get all into the different stat lines as we kind of talk about this game. But Payton Pritchard, Greg, this was his night where he's launching that 6th Man of the Year campaign. We're in election season. Payton Pritchard, get out there and vote, everybody. We got a couple months here, but get out there and vote and put up some love for Payton Pritchard. Just a massive night for him tonight. 28 points off the bench, 10 of 14 shooting, 8 of 12 from the 3-point line. And listen, he still had 5 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals. So it wasn't as if he was only out there shooting the lights out of the ball and hitting another third quarter buzzer beater. And somebody from MIT, Harvard, they got to get down there and study Payton Pritchard. There's got to be something that happens to him at the end of a quarter. And I was thinking, Greg, I think there was a game, or maybe this is like the next gen stats commercials they do where it's like it's way overkill of like percentage to score, and it's like at the bottom of a player as they're running around, whatever. It's way overkill. But in that moment, the percentage of likelihood to score under Payton Pritchard's got to jump to like 70-80% because there is just something different about him in that moment. But this was ultimately his night on in a game where Jason Tatum struggled. Jaylen struggled in the first half. Amazing second half from Jaylen Brown, which we'll talk about here. But Payton Pritchard coming out and giving the Celtics life in the first half and then continuing to make big shots in the second half. He definitely was the hero of this game for the Celtics.
Yeah, and Payton Pritchard is starting to like be a little bit more active on social media. He's becoming like a little bit of a micro influencer. Then he's got that, I think somebody from the Trump campaign needs to study Payton Pritchard's PR team right now, because I feel like Payton Pritchard's PR team is doing a really good job. Donald Trump's out here getting Tony Hinchcliffe spouting off racist shit at Madison Square Garden. And Payton Pritchard's just out there making, wholesome family content, just playing one-on-one at an empty park with a local kid from Boston. Like maybe try something like that. It was great. Payton Pritchard is just looking like he's really coming into his own now that he's got his contract. He's got his role with this team. The shot is locked in, loaded, ready to go. And he's playing with so much confidence. And it's not just like, obviously he goes to a whole nother level of confidence when there's 5 seconds left at the end of a quarter and the Celtics have the ball. He goes to that whole nother level, but that confidence is trickling into the rest of his game for a full 48, where Payton Pritchard, the Celtics are using him as a decoy weapon in certain actions to get Jaylen Brown open post-ups out of timeouts. Like that's the type of stuff that Payton Pritchard is doing right now on the court. And Doc Rivers was just losing his shit, because I'm pretty sure Doc Rivers subbed in DeLon Wright just to cover Payton Pritchard on that end of quarter buzzer beater. And Payton Pritchard clearly pushed off on DeLon Wright, but doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, because Doc Rivers, I don't know if you saw it, Will, they cut to Doc after Payton Pritchard hit the 3, and he was just bent over. He's always kind of bent over, hands on his knees, but he was bent over, hands on his knees, just like flabbergasted that Payton Pritchard hit another 3-pointer.
It's a rough start to the season for the Bucks. They dropped to 1-3 on the season, and we'll get to their schedule here because I do want to talk a little bit about this rough start for the Milwaukee Bucks. They go to 1-3, so I think you're going to see Doc in a lot of those exasperated positions as we go forward here. And this is a reason that when we did our NBA preview, both you and I were, I think, lower. We're certainly just lower in general on the Bucks. You had them 7th, I had them 5th. We didn't really see them, especially as a regular season, although you did pick them for the conference finals despite being a 6 or 7
here's the thing.
But
let's talk about the Bucks. Let's talk about them right now, because I thought they looked good tonight. Like they're physical, they're big. Giannis and Brook Lopez are a problem for Jason Tatum near the rim. If we're gonna go small with Al Horford covering Giannis Antetokounmpo, that means Jason Tatum has to cover Brook Lopez, and the wear and tear of Tatum covering a behemoth 5 like Brook Lopez throughout the game, where Tatum was in foul trouble at the end of the game, like that never happens. Tatum was clearly frustrated. He's playing very physical, and you could see in his legs, like he just didn't quite have it on the offensive side of the ball. And that is because of his responsibility on defense, where he's playing the 5 position, which is crazy.
Yeah, and I think the scariest part about what you just said, if for some reason a Bucks fan is listening right now, I agree with you. I thought they played pretty well up until they ran out of gas towards the end. And this game was a 16-point game in the fourth quarter. Jason Tatum shot 6 of 16 and 1 of 8 from 3. Jaylen Brown didn't hit a 3 in this game. And, it was really a tale of 2 halves for Jaylen Brown. But I think when you just look at that Bucks team, and you're right, I do think their physicality threw the Jays off specifically a little bit. And, one of the things they do really well with Brook Lopez that I think the Celtics in some ways need to replicate is just when they get those mismatches, they just find a way to just get it into Brook Lopez and get that shot up. Like I do think with Kristaps back, that will change a bit for the Celtics. But I think even with Al Horford, there's times where if you're going to try to hide Damian Lillard or another small guard from a different team on Al Horford, I sometimes just want them to go, hey, just Al, get in the post and let's just get you an angle and just get that shot right up, right? Because those guys aren't blocking it. The Bucks do a really good job of that with Brook Lopez. And then it was just Giannis and Dame. But here's the thing, Greg. It's those three names, and they had no help. There was no one else outside
Gary
of
Trent
those
had a
three
couple
tonight.
moments. Yeah.
Basically he hit a shot to end the first quarter and he hit a shot to start the second quarter. That was about the Gary Trent experience in this game.
Yeah, which is why I was not high on them getting Gary Trent. But just like my prediction of them being in the Eastern Conference Finals, as long as they have some semblance of health, meaning Giannis needs to be 100% in the playoffs and Dame Lillard needs to be 100% in the playoffs, they have enough, I think, to grind teams down in a 7-game series where they should, I think, be one of the last two teams standing, just because Giannis, as we saw tonight, is just so goddamn good at basketball, right? And Chris Middleton still isn't back, and we never know if Chris Middleton's going to be back at 100%, but he was good in the playoffs last year. It's just you never know when you're going to
surgeries.
Yeah, you never know when you're going to get Chris Middleton for like a 4-week stretch in a row.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I think with the Bucks, they definitely need help. But one thing I was noticing, they clearly took a page out of their ex-teammate Pat Bev's book and were just fouling the shit out of the Celtics the entire game, and were daring the referees to call stuff. Like even Dame Lillard, the ball pressure he was putting on Derek White early in the game, where there was that one play where he smacked Derek
on the inbound as well too, doing the same
thing.
Right.
Right, just doing like Pat Bev annoying shit. But he smacked Derek White on the waist. Then he grabbed Derek White on the arm as Derek White was making a pass. The pass went to Jason Tatum, and Derek White looked at the ref like, are you really just not going to call that? And the ref called the foul like a whole second and a half late, because he was like, we can't just keep letting them get away with this. And that was clearly the game plan, especially against the Jays, was to just reach and foul and see what you can get away with. And I really think they learned that from Pat Bev, who's no longer on the team, but was on the team last year.
So, Greg, let me ask you this. The Celtics will play the Bucks again on November 10th, which, by the way, we will also be doing we will not be doing a Bleacher Report for that. I'll be in Ireland. But Greg will be giving you some type of content from that game. But the Celtics play the Bucks again here November 10th. There's 5 games between now and then for the Bucks. They have the Grizzlies, the Cavs twice, the Jazz, and the Knicks. So over those 5 games, when the Celtics meet the Bucks again, they're currently 1-3. What's the Bucks record by the time they get to they play the Celtics again in Milwaukee?
They probably split with the Cavs. I think they beat the Grizzlies. Who's the other team? They're playing the Knicks.
The Knicks and the Jazz.
I mean, I think they win both of those games. I think the Knicks still have a little bit of room to grow. They lost to the Cavs.
You're giving this team a lot of credit, who just lost games to the Bulls and the Nets previous to this. I'm just going to point that out.
That's true. That's true. The Nets game last night was definitely a trap game, though, with the Celtics the night after. But that's fair. That's fair. They might be 2-7 by that time.
Yeah, I mean that's the Jazz is the one game you can look at as like, okay, that's got to be a W for this team. But the Knicks, Cavs, and Grizzlies are all going to be teams that everyone expects to be tough playoff teams. So, point being, whichever way you want to slice it, it's a rough start for the Bucks. They're 1-3. We'll check back in with them in about a week and a half or so, or about 2 weeks. But Greg, while you're talking about Giannis, one thing that I do want to say here is, let's not take Al Horford for granted. Now, Giannis still had 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists, but he also had 7 turnovers. Mm-hmm. And when I start to think of what life might look like without Al Horford when we play the Bucks, when we play the Sixers, I don't like what that future looks like, because Al Horford, it's one of those classic things where we talk about this a bunch. You don't stop these, superstar guys. They're going to get those numbers that I just read off to you. It's how do you make their life super difficult? And the 7 turnovers, not all from Al Horford. Obviously, Derek White, there's just great team defense. I thought the Celtics played at different stretches, and Giannis just did his thing at certain points as well, because he's Giannis. This is why we still respect the Bucks. But the job Al Horford did tonight needs to be commended. Played 27 minutes in this game, had a block early on, had I think 2 blocks that were both on Giannis in this game. It's still really impressive to see him at age 37, 38, being able to be as close to a Giannis stopper as you might be able to find in the NBA.
Yeah, and I think with Al, he's just willing to guard Giannis, right? A lot of people just don't want that matchup, and Al looks forward to it. And he's
He
going to be
loves
the
it.
guy that, when Al Horford is 50 years old and Giannis Antetokounmpo is 37 or whatever, I'd probably have the math wrong on that. But I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be at the end of his career, and he's still going to be looking over his shoulder, wondering if Al Horford's checking into a game, right? Because Al
Yeah.
Horford is just always there, man. With Giannis, so much of what he does is full speed, straight at you, and Al Horford every single time is willing to just look down that tunnel, right? Where see the freight train coming
How
at him, and
scary do
he
you think that, like, so you know how they have all these like 3D vision goggles now, you can watch games. I kind of want to see what that feels like if you're just Al Horford and Giannis is coming straight down at you like a freight train. Like it looks terrifying.
It does, and he just is willing to play chicken with Giannis on every single possession, and he got him a couple times. To your point, man, it's really impressive stuff. And then our guy Derek freaking White, draws a charge on Giannis in the first half, and in the second half, he's in the kind of like the low spot on the baseline. Giannis cutting full speed to the basket. Derek White gets in position above the charge line, jumps straight up in the air. Giannis kind of like doesn't get up in the air as much as he thought he was going to, and Derek White blocks his shot. Derek White got Giannis too, and Derek White's just the man. He had a couple great moments in this game tonight. Derek White 5 for 13 from the field, only 3 for 10 from three, but it felt more. It felt like those 3-point shots were like, maybe it's like the Gary Trent moment where he just hit him in a flurry there, but
Yeah.
they were all big, and then he had 8 assists to go along with the steal and the block. That's a Derek White game.
Man, I know Payton Pritchard went 8 of 12, and in Holiday, who we need to talk about as well. I thought Jrue Holiday was really good,
Drew's
especially
great, yeah,
offensively in this game.
and he was terrible
4 of
against the
7
Bucks
from
last
3.
year.
Yeah, and this tonight was I think he was right there. And we still haven't talked about Jaylen Brown yet, but the point I wanted to make here quickly is the Celtics shot 18 of 47 from 3 for 38%. That's not bad. This felt like a bad game from 3 for the Celtics.
Right.
Like, that's how spoiled we are with this team, that I look at this stat box right now, the stat line here, and I'm 18 of 47, 38. And it's like, man, it didn't feel like a great night shooting from 3. And most nights, most NBA teams are taking that, no questions asked. If you just put that on the table, take this, or do you think you can do better? Most teams would just take that right
Well,
away.
I think part of it is that Jason Tatum was 1 for 8 and Jaylen Brown was 0 for 4, right? Like anytime your two
That's 1 of 12,
superstars don't have it going from 3, maybe it kind of feels like maybe the whole team was off. But if you take those guys out of there, that's 17 for 35, 50%. So without the
Right.
Jays, the rest of the team is 50%, and that's a testament to the depth that we have on this team and the amount of willing shooters that we have in this team. But you want to talk about Jaylen?
Yeah, let's do. I would say we got to talk about Jaylen and Jrue. So we can go either way here. Let's go Jaylen, because you mentioned it. The Bucks were playing very well in this game, and I watched a decent amount, especially the second half of that Nets Bucks game last night. And I was like, man, this team is in trouble when they come to Boston. Like, this team is not going to be up to the task of defending the Celtics. If you can't guard, Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson and Dennis Schroeder, like you're in for a whole new world when you take that train down to Boston and you guys come into the TD Garden. But and I do think Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum felt the effects of the Bucks, and Scal harped on this all night. Like, this is a team that felt their backs against the wall, and they were playing with a different level of energy, of connectivity, all that, early on in this game. And they got, as you said, physical with the Jays. And I thought Jaylen was having a really bad first half. If I'm being honest, I did not think.
Well, he had a pretty bad game the other night as well. He was 6 for 24.
It felt like a spillover from it.
Yeah,
It felt like the momentum of that carried over. And I was like, I don't know if this is going to be the night. And then he came out, and Jaylen was unbelievable in the second half, specifically in that third quarter, just taking the ball in the paint, getting to kind of that mid-post range. And he was just, all that strength, all that off-season bulk, he put it to work in that quarter.
And he was 10 for 14 from the free throw line. It's only 71%, but that feels pretty good. Jaylen Brown being 10 for 14.
But him getting to the line that much is
that's
exactly. Usually him getting there 7-8 times is, man, Jaylen got to the lines, and I doubled that up tonight.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was him recognizing how physical the defenders were being, and he was just like, "You know what? I'm gonna be a little bit more patient. I'm not just gonna do the old Jaylen Brown thing where I'm just gonna drive into traffic and turn the ball over." He had 4 turnovers tonight, but I felt like he really had it under control in the second half there. And he was just very patient in the post. His post game, not just the mid post, but his full down low post game has gotten to the point where he can take you deep into the post, or he can take one dribble out and kind of like end the possession in a kind of mid post fadeaway jump shot. And he's really starting to get into a little bit like DeMar DeRozan territory with his ability to get people to bite on that pump fake. We saw it a little bit more in the finals last year. You know, that one big bucket that he hit in, what was it, game 3 over Tim Hardaway Jr., where he iced the game with
that was when the Celtics
18
almost
footer.
blew the 20-something point lead, and then he put the kibosh on that because Luka fouled out and they had to put in Tim Hardaway.
Right. And Jaylen, you know, goes shot fake, and then Tim Hardaway comes down. Jaylen hits a shot over him, and people are really starting to bite on that shot fake. And he's at the point where people almost don't know if he's gonna go up or not. So that when he does go up, they're almost too close to him. And when he does shot fake, they decide to jump for whatever reason. The shot fake is just like on point this year. So I think with that development in Jaylen's game, plus he had 6 rebounds, 4 assists tonight, his physicality, and talking about Payton Pritchard's confidence, Jaylen's confidence, although he was 6 for 24 from the field the other night, it is not wavering one bit. He knows coming into the season that he's in his prime and he's playing like it.
Yeah, I feel like at times in the past, we've seen that shot. I'm like, we can tell his confidence just isn't there, and now he can just shrug it off, right? And this is what we talked about leading into the season for this team. One of the X factors is, what is it like with the weight of not every single shot feels like, is the first segment on, First Take or online going to be, should we break up the Jays? No,
Right.
you can't do that anymore. Not when you win a championship and when you're playing, you can't do it. So there's just a freedom that you're seeing him and Tatum play with. And even on a night where Tatum, has a down night, I'm expecting Tatum on Wednesday against the Pacers to have a big night. Like, I just think that's just how this is going to go with this team, is one bad night and then come back with a big game. And I looked it up while you were talking here. Those 4 turnovers for Jaylen, 3 of those were in the first half. So, just completely different world. 9 points in the first half, 21 points in the second half for Jaylen Brown. I think as the Bucks were, seemingly felt like they were going to like hang around all night and keep this close and competitive. And it was really Jaylen that started to be the separation in that third quarter. And the Celtics had, I think it was like an 18-2 run towards the end of the third quarter. It wasn't quite all the way towards the end, but you just felt the Garden come alive. And a lot of that was spurred on by what Jaylen Brown brought. But I also thought, and I want to talk about Jrue Holiday here for a few minutes. You mentioned he kind of struggled a little bit against his old team last year. In this game, he was 7 of 12 from the field, 4 of 7 from the 3-point line. I thought he did a great job of getting into the lane, kind of similar to Jaylen Brown. In that second half, ends up with 21 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. And it's interesting because obviously Jrue Holiday never really has a bad defensive game, but there's not necessarily as many Jrue Holiday defensive highlights in this one that jump out to you. But I think his offense was super important. And this is, once again, the cheat code that is the Boston Celtics, still without Kristaps Porzingis, that Tatum can have an off night, Jaylen Brown can have a bad half, and then you get the Payton Pritchard game. You get the spurt that we talked about from Derek White. You get Jrue Holiday coming in and dropping 21 points. Now you've got 3 guys still scoring above 20 points for this team. And this is the area where, after the first round against Miami, Jrue Holiday was so good the last 3 rounds in the playoffs, being that guy that's like, okay, I've got you. I'll be the 4th scorer and give you 10 to 15, or I'm going to give you 20 plus if you need me to be that second, third guy. Tonight, I thought he was just excellent on the offensive end.
Yeah, and with the Bucks, they were early in the game, they were in a drop so that Lopez could protect the rim. And in the second half, they went to a little bit more, especially in the fourth quarter. They started switching everything, which is why you saw Lopez isolated against Tatum a couple times. He had isolated against Jaylen. He actually did a pretty good job in those isolations, just having really active hands and anticipating where the Jays were going with that. But what that did was that brought him away from the basket a little bit more, right? And just because Tatum and Brown draw so much attention, Jrue Holiday was the beneficiary of the spacing, where he was able able to just get to the rim with no shot blocking at the rim because there was so much attention at the 3-point line. Even with Al Horford, Payton Pritchard being in the game, just being a problem for the Bucks the entire game. Jrue Holiday is such a smart player. He's so good at those slot drives and just using his bucket with using the veer step to get those buckets in the paint. And I think a lot of it has to do with just like the lack of depth on the Bucks as well, because when you have your two best defenders on the court, right, are Antetokounmpo and Lopez, and then Taurean Prince is okay. He's a willing defender. Gary Trent,
Andre Jackson's a decent defender, but he just fouls all the time and he can't really play offense. So you can't keep him. Right. But I'm saying that's how bad it is, right? That's maybe who you go to next.
Right. So when Jrue Holiday is looking at Taurean Prince and Gary Trent Jr. and Dame Lillard, he's like, really, this is who you guys are covering me with? I'm Jrue Holiday. Come on. You guys know, you know what I can do. I was on your team.
Yeah. It's like, who I am. You know how this goes. Like, I used to be the number 2 on a championship team.
Yeah.
Like, now I'm the number 4.
I was surprised DeLon Wright only played 10 minutes.
Yeah, I like DeLon Wright. And that's the interesting part about the Bucks, right? Is their offseason acquisitions were Taurean Prince, Gary Trent Jr., and Darrell Wright were kind of like the or DeLon Wright, excuse me, were the main guys that they brought in. And when you have the way that the CBA is making everybody operate on the edges, like, that's not bad when you have nothing to work with. Like, that's not a bad offseason, but when you don't have Chris Middleton there, everything just falls apart, right? And this was my whole thing last year, is Chris Middleton was the key to the Dame Lillard trade, and it never lined up. And here we are, year 2, and they talked about in the broadcast, TBD. What is Chris Middleton's timeline for when he's coming back? And that's where it gets really scary for the Bucks, is like, what's it going to look like to try to power through this regular season and then see where the chips fall when you get to playoff time, where their seeding's at. And, you just got to kind of hope that things get sorted out. But as we mentioned, they've got a tough stretch coming up. We'll see them again on November 10th. So we'll have some coverage for you for that game down the road here. As I mentioned, I'll be away. I'll be in the home of the Celtics, the homeland of the Celtics. I'll be in Ireland here for about a week coming up. So we'll figure out some coverage for that time. But from here, we want to actually introduce a couple of new segments that we're going to be doing weekly on the show. So most likely, if you guys are trying to figure out what our recording schedule is, it's going to fluctuate a little bit depending on the schedule for the Celtics, as well as our life schedules as well. But just about generally, you can bank on either a Sunday or Monday recording and or podcast dropping. And so on those recordings, we're going to have 2 new segments. One of them is going to be the hottest take of the week. And that's either going to be a take that Greg or I have that we just got to get out there. We're not sure where it fits into the show, where it fits into our conversation, but this is going to be the area that we can explore. Or the internet never lets you down. The internet is an endless pit of takes. So if we don't have one, we're going to pull one from the internet, and we're going to talk about that as our hottest take of the week. And then we'll also bring to you our stat of the week. Another thing that just lives forever in the internet is finding all different stats. We have advanced stats. We've got basic stats. We've got so many different ones that we can talk about. So those are going to be 2 new segments that you can expect to hear every Sunday or Monday when we drop a pod. So with that, 1 week into the NBA season, Greg, hottest take. Do you want to go first? Do you have one ready to go here, or would you like me to jump into the deep end?
Oh, man. I mean, okay. I mentioned this at the beginning of the show. We never like to get political on the show or anything, but I got to go with Tony Hinchcliffe. We live in Austin, Texas. Okay. Tony Hinchcliffe is a pretty well-known comedian down here in Austin. He has a show called Kill Tony, and he's an insult comic, right? If you watch the Tom Brady roast, he had like a pretty epic 3-minute roast of everybody out there. Tony Hinchcliffe is a comedian. He insults people. Donald Trump's campaign deciding to open up the whatever the convention was the other night with Tony Hinchcliffe just doing what he does, but in the wrong forum. And then going on Twitter after saying that Puerto Rico was a floating pile of garbage in the ocean, Tony Hinchcliffe says, "These people have no sense of humor. Wild that a presidential candidate would take time out of his quote-unquote busy schedule to analyze a joke taken out of context to make it seem racist. I love Puerto Rico and vacation there. I made fun of everyone. Watch the whole set. I'm a comedian, Tim. might be time to change your tampon. Hottest take. What you did, Tony Hinchcliffe, was just wrong. Like, it was not a good move for the Trump campaign. It was not a good look for you. And just because you vacation in Puerto Rico doesn't mean that you love Puerto Rico and you respect Puerto Rican culture. Like, it's just mind-boggling that this is what the world has come to. When I saw it, I thought it was AI. I thought it was AI generated.
Yeah, it's honestly, and like you said, we very rarely get political on this show, but I would assume most listeners can kind of tell which way we probably lean politically, and it's not the way of Donald Trump. I'll tell you that much. And so, my wife was the one, Lorena, the one that drew this to my attention. And honestly, like, I feel like I've become so desensitized to this type of like behavior. And I know this is a little bit different, obviously, because this is just like outrageous. But like, I didn't even react to it like the way that I probably should have, because I was like, oh, this happened at a Trump rally. Like, this feels on brand that they would bring in a roast comic to say the most egregious thing that they could probably think of that is just insane to have happen in the middle of an election, right? Like, if
this had happened at a roast, fine. If this had happened at a roast, totally fine. You can't do this at a freaking political rally. It's crazy. It was crazy. But the I don't want to talk about like the politics of it and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to talk about the hot take of Tony Hinchcliffe talking about how what he did was okay. You weren't at a roast, my guy. You just weren't at a roast. Let's move on. That was my hottest take. Tony Hinchcliffe saying that what he did was okay.
Yeah, that's a pretty aggressive hot take. So yeah, so hot takes can go anywhere, folks. That's kind of the premise that we're working on here. I am going to bring it back to basketball though for my hottest take of the week. So this is my own personal hot take here, and it's that Cam Thomas is the #1 league pass appointment viewing in the game right now.
Okay.
Cam Thomas,
tell me more,
is unbelievable to watch. What'd you say?
I can't watch him.
Well, this is my point. It's a hate watch. He's the most hate watchable individual of all time. So I mentioned before that I watched basically the second half of the Bucks Nets game. I also caught the end of the Nets Hawks games. And here's the thing. I disagree with every single decision that Cam Thomas makes on a basketball court. And I think any team that is looking to win any legitimate games in the NBA should never have this guy on their team. But I can't look away. This man, no one in the NBA has ever had a more green light than Cam Thomas. It's insane. Every time you're like, okay, he's going to have to pass the ball, he just doesn't. He never passes. It never happens. So last night, one of my favorite plays I think I've seen in a long time was they ended up beating the Bucks. And, he was a part of that. He was hitting crazy shots, took a million bad shots, but did hit some shots. But I think at one point, Giannis hit a shot. So this is off a made bucket. And Nets were up something like 7, 8, 9 points, something like that. There's like 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Off a made bucket, Cam Thomas gets the ball, sprints up court, full speed, stops on a dime at the top of the 3-point line, right in front of the basket, 3-point line, shoots a shot with like 20 seconds left on the shot clock, full speed, right into a 3-point shot, misses. His momentum carries him into the lane. It's a long rebound. He gets the rebound, and instead of bringing it back out, he immediately tries to catch it and then do a jump shot and is blocked by Giannis. It was one of the greatest sequences I've ever seen. It's such bad basketball. It makes no sense, and his entire team keeps looking for him. When he doesn't have the basketball, it seems like the Nets' only play is how do we get the ball back to Cam Thomas? It's fascinating. It's horrible, horrible basketball to watch, but in small doses, you just can't take your eyes off it. It's a train wreck that I can't look away from.
Yeah, like that style of player, I just can't really watch. Like
it's I disagree with everything. It's everything you and I say for players that we don't like is like, do I just agree with your general decisions? The answer is no every time, but it's the fact that it's no every time. Like, there's not any decisions that I agree with. Like, usually I don't like Precious Achiuwa's decision making, but it's like, okay, he has good effort here. I see what he was doing. There's none of that with Cam Thomas. That doesn't exist. Just horrible decisions and occasionally very bad shots go in. It's fascinating to me.
The best case scenario for Cam Thomas is that one day somebody on a Celtics podcast says, you know what? On a good day, he reminds me of Ben Gordon, and that's me saying that right now. But that's all I got for you, Cam Thomas. That's all I got for you. But I was wondering, Will, so, as part of this take segment, why don't we just also just say some other takes that we're just thinking about, stuff that's just kind of floating around in the old brain. It doesn't necessarily have to be a hot take, but these are just some takes that we're kind of cooking up here. One thing I'm thinking about, JJ Redick, actually a really good coach already.
Seems like it.
Seems like we don't have to talk much about it. I just want to say something and we can just move on. JJ Redick?
Yeah.
Already
JJ Redick could be a really good coach. I think that's definitely a possibility. Anthony Davis, MVP potential. I mean, I think that's at least playing early on. Early on, he's playing like it. I don't know if let me see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that's really just jumped out to me. And what else you got going on?
LaMelo Ball.
You always get a lot going on in your brain.
LaMelo Ball, just really fun to watch when he's got it going. The one-footed 3-point shot. First guy to really do it in the NBA. He's making it part of his repertoire. Yeah. A one-footed 3-point shot. I'm finding myself just picking different games and finding one or two players to watch all of their field goal attempts or all their block shots. And with LaMelo, he's one of the guys that I'm finding myself watching all of his field goal attempts because he's just kind of fun, man. He's shooting 30-footers. He's getting to the basket, doing whatever LaMelo does.
Been fun. The question has been health, and then it's been, is this an actual winning style of basketball that can can turn into something?
He's a 6'6" Trae Young.
Right. So it's okay, I'll take the length over the 6'1" of Trae Young. You know what I mean? That's kind of been the thing. But Paolo Banchero, first 50-point game of the season tonight, had 37, I think 37, 8, and 9 at halftime tonight. Ended up with, I think, 1 assist shy of a triple-double. But there's a lot of good basketball going on around the NBA right now.
Let's read some scores. Yeah, let's read some scores.
Just looking at it right here. Denver, we were watching this game, or you were watching this game before we hopped on here, pulled it out in overtime against the Raptors, 127-125. The second, or maybe just as hot as the Celtics in the East, Cleveland Cavaliers off to a hot 4-0 start, beat the Knicks tonight 110-104. And like I said, Milwaukee's that's 2 games that you were saying they probably split. We'll see. I don't know. Cleveland's playing good basketball right now, and so I mean, honestly, Greg, early season NBA is really fun because I always feel like there's surprises, right? And will they last? Who knows? I remember 2 years ago, the Wizards felt like, man, are the Wizards going to be something? 2-3. This is one of the last years of Bradley Beal. It's like, man, the Wizards going to be something? They're kind of competitive. I think they beat the Celtics even once or twice. This is 3 years ago. And then by the end of the season, they won 30 games, or they won 25 games. Pistons, I think a couple of years ago, same thing. And now Pistons, now they fell to 0-4 in Miami, beat them tonight 106-90. So they're still playing competitive games, but they're still not winning in Detroit is what it seems like. But it is fun to kind of look around and see some of the different scores here in the NBA. Bulls beat Memphis. That's an interesting one, 126-123. So got some games that we'll have to check in with here afterwards. But Greg, let's go to our stat of the week, and then we'll wrap this podcast up here. What do you got for us for stat of the week?
Okay. Let's see. I kind of want to give a little bit of context here. So, as of when I looked this up, I did my research maybe Saturday night. So things have changed a little bit, I think. But the top 4 teams in stocks per game, as of Saturday, were the Hawks, Pelicans, Thunder, and Cavs. So the Hawks were averaging 11.5 steals and 9 blocks. The Pelicans were averaging 13.5 steals and 9 blocks, which is a ridiculous amount. OKC was averaging 12 steals and 9 blocks. Cleveland was averaging 12 steals and 7.7 blocks. Last night, the Oklahoma City Thunder had 25 combined stocks against the Atlanta Hawks.
That defense.
Chet Holmgren had 6 blocks. That team, man, that stat of 25 combined steals and blocks is an insane amount. Just think about that. 25 steals and blocks in a game.
I've watched Thunder versus the Nuggets, and I watched some of that Hawks game last night. Thunder defense is scary, man. They are relentless. They're deep. Basically, everyone besides maybe Isaiah Joe is an above average, but not even average, is above average defender. And Isaiah Joe tries. He's a knockdown 3-point shooter. He's a weapon on the other end. But when you look at that, the fact that Kayson Wallace, who stripped Trae Young in one of the plays I was watching, just straight up D'd up Trae Young and ripped him, just straight cookies.
3 steals for
And
him.
that's your like 8th guy, maybe 9th guy is Kason Wallace. Like that's, and Hartenstein's not even out there yet. They don't even have Hartenstein yet.
One of the best offensive rebounders in the game. Caruso had 3 steals, 2 blocks. Shea had 3 steals, 3 blocks. Chet had 6 blocks and a steal. Lou Dort, who you think of would probably have a steal or a block, didn't have any.
Right.
like they're you know who I really like, actually? Aaron Wiggins. I really like
He's
Aaron
really
Wiggins.
good, dude. He's really good. He stood out a lot to me too, especially in the Thunder Nuggets game I was watching. Aaron Wiggins is a real guy. That's a real guy for their team.
I know.
He might be better than Andrew Wiggins. We'll see.
He might be. Okay,
that's a good one though, man. That Thunder team. I was trying to pick the Nuggets just to be different. The Thunder's the answer. The Thunder is the answer. The team that should come out of the West. Well, I mean, obviously, just long season to go here, but yeah, and they're athletic. They're deep. They can shoot. They've got the superstar player. They've got 2 star players. Like they really do have everything. That's a team that I think will be scary for the Celtics if it ever gets to that matchup. But I'm okay. I'm gonna go to my stat of the week here, and I'm actually stealing this from our guy Brian Barrett over at the Ringer here. He tweeted this out earlier today, so it may have updated since the game ended here. But I was thinking about it because one thing that has been very apparent just early in the season is, you look at that Knicks game and you look at the game tonight, and we talked about just finding those mismatches, finding those opportunities. And the Celtics don't care who it is. They're equal opportunity assassins when it comes to finding that mismatch. And so the Celtics this year in isolation, 15.7 possessions per game, first in the league, 20.7 points per game off of those possessions, first in the league, 1.32 points per possession, 4th in the league. And so going into this game, and this is what led me to tweet out, I thought Derek White might have a big night because Dames just was likely going to be guarding him. And it was like, the Celtics don't even care about necessarily going to be like, oh, we got to set a screen and get this individual here. It's no, we have Derek White. We have Jrue Holiday. We have Payton Pritchard. We don't care. You have the mismatch. If you had there's clearly guys that they've identified that this is the mismatch. This is who we want to hunt. And just about everyone the Celtics have, and then when they get Kristaps back, that even changes more. There's no one that the Celtics are afraid to say you can't take this guy individually if set up in the right position, whether that be Payton Pritchard has them outside, or as we saw, it's Jrue, the floor is spread. Jrue Holiday takes Pat Connaughton off the dribble, or it's Jaylen Brown down in the post against Gary Trent, or whatever it might be. They're finding all these different ways for isolation to work for them, without having to do the, hey, clear out, let me dribble and see what I get to, but setting it up for success with all the things that we talked about. Like you said, a lot of the off-ball cutting and movement that creates spacing, creates lanes. And so this stat jumped out to me when Brian Barrett tweeted it today. And I think the game tonight, especially as we went further and further into that game in the second half, really played itself out with hunting whatever mismatches they could find.
Coming into the game, the Celtics were dead last in the league in drives per game, which is pretty interesting. 29.7 drives per game. Number 1 in the league, OKC. What would you say? The Celtics dead last, 29.7 drives per game. OKC was first. What would you, is a guess? Like it's significantly more drives.
Like how many drives per game?
How many drives per game do you think OKC is doing?
43.
Keep going.
52.
Higher.
70.
63.
63 okay. I was going to say, there's only so many possessions in the game here. I was like, I don't know how higher I'm going to go.
63 drives per game compared to the Celtics at 29.7. Something to watch. Just something to watch this year, because the Celtics obviously rely a lot on the 3-point shot. But two very contrasting styles with the 2 best teams in the league, opposite sides of the conference.
Do you know how that statistic is measured? Because so even like a driving kick, is that still a drive, or this is drives that end in shot? I'm
pretty sure they just track all drives to the basket, even if it doesn't lead to a shot.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is I do like that. Like if you're just looking at the statistic profile, that would probably lead to what I was saying the other night. I don't feel like it's true about this. They just jack up threes, right? Like I feel like there is like there is a process to it. Now, obviously, when your goal is to shoot 50 to 60 threes a night, there's going to be a couple where you could be like, yeah, I don't think the process was quite there on that one. You just kind of ran down
first in the league in pull-up shots, both 2s and 3s attempted and made per game. 9 3-point makes on 38% on pull-up threes and 12 field goals made. So they're hitting 3 pull-up jump shots from mid-range coming into the game tonight. 49% on catch and shoot threes through 3 games, which was 3rd in the league, on 27 3-point attempts per game, which is 9th. So they're generating the 9th most catch and shoot threes. They're averaging 13.3 3-pointers made on catch and shoot, which is 2nd in the league to the Warriors, 14, and the Warriors were first place there.
All right. We got some stats to keep an eye on here. So this will be a recurring segment that we have coming back to you each week, every Sunday or Monday pod that recording that we do. We'll have hottest take of the week, and then we will have stat of the week for you as well.
Maybe we can just call Brian Barrett and just be like, hey, come on, like every week, come on for 5 minutes and just spew out all of your stats.
Just all the stats. Cause yeah, he's got a bunch of them. It seemingly, he gets into a rhythm here and just shoots them all out. So maybe we'll bring him on for that one of these upcoming episodes. Rest of the week here, Celtics play the Pacers rematch Eastern Conference Finals on Wednesday night. Likely Greg and I will have a recording for you either Thursday or Friday talking about that game and then setting you up for the weekend with a double dip with the Charlotte Hornets. And once again, if you want to join us on Saturday night, download the Bleacher Report app. Come hang with us after the game on Saturday night, Charlotte Hornets and the Boston Celtics. We will have that for you immediately following the conclusion of that game. And this is the conclusion of this episode of Green with Envy. Greg, any final thoughts here before we send it out to some black sheep optimists?
No thoughts. Excited for the next one.
No thoughts. We got them all out there. See, have one hot take segment and just start throwing ideas out there. Got nothing left for the end of the podcast. I think we've done our job here. We'll catch you guys later in the week. Celtics 4-0. Look to make it 5-0 on Wednesday. We will catch you guys later. Peace.
Missed free throw. Horford the rebound. Here's Pritchard. He loves these. Puts it up half court of the buzzer.
Every time I get this high, I lose my mind. It don't take much no more until I hit the floor. Every time I get this high, it's you I find. It don't take much no more until I'm at your door.
I'm coming to my core, baby. What can I say? You got me on the floor, you know I came to play. I know I shouldn't, but you seem to take my pain away. And every time I score, Jason Tatum fade away. I close my eyes and I'm floating the river. I call to see if you open, you know I hope you deliver. Every time you getting close, I still be sick with the shivers. But there's nothing like that first time. I still remember the first time I saw you. You were looking so fine, chill like lo-fi, watch you go by. It was all I could do.